The wind whipped through the wildflower fields, carrying the faint thump of helicopter blades in the distance. Elijah Thompson stood defiant, his weathered hands gripping a faded photograph of his son as the sheriff's deputy approached with a court order. "You're trespassing on private property, Mr. Thompson," the deputy said, his voice cold. "This land's been sold." Eli didn't flinch, his eyes fixed on the horizon, where his boy's memory bloomed in every petal. Across the state, at Arlington's Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, Tomb Guard Daniel Harper marched his 21 steps, unaware that a single phone call was about to pull him into a fight for a farmer he'd never met. In 24 hours, a secret buried in that Virginia soil would surface, and two men, one bound by duty, the other by loss, would change the course of a community forever. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe that values like honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, join us in keeping their legacy alive. The mist hung heavy over Arlington National Cemetery, draping the rows of white headstones in a quiet shroud. Each marker stood as a silent sentinel, a reminder of lives given for country, for freedom, for something greater than themselves. At the heart of this sacred ground was the tomb of the unknown soldier, where Daniel Harper, a 32-year-old sentinel of the 3rd Infantry Regiment, marched his precise 21 steps. His polished boots clicked against the stone plaza, a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. 21 steps, turned, pause, 21 steps back. His shoulders were squared, his eyes fixed forward, the weight of his M14 rifle a constant anchor. For Danny, this wasn't just duty, it was a vow, a way to honor his older brother, Michael, who never made it home from a dusty road in Afghanistan. As Danny marched, his mind drifted to Michael. They'd grown up in a small Ohio town, fishing in the creek behind their house, dreaming of adventure. The last time he saw Michael, they'd been camping, the fire crackling as Michael tossed him a worn silver dollar, a keepsake from their grandfather, a World War II vet. "Keep this for me, kid," Michael had said, grinning. "I'll be back for it." Danny was 19, then a scrawny kid who idolized his brother. Now, at 32, he carried that coin in his pocket every day, even during his watch at the tomb. It was his tether to Michael, to the promise he'd made, to live a life worthy of that sacrifice. Every step he took was for the unknowns, for Michael, for every name etched in stone around him. 30 miles away, in the rolling hills of rural Virginia, Elijah Thompson stood in the doorway of his barn, the scent of hay and damp earth filling his lungs. At 68, Eli's hands were rough as leather, etched with decades of plowing fields and hauling harvests. His farm wasn't much by modern standards, just 200 acres of corn, potatoes, and a small field of wildflowers he'd planted for his son Caleb, a Marine who didn't come back from Iraq. Every morning, Eli walked that field, tending to the black-eyed Susans and coneflowers like they were all he had left of his boy. On his kitchen table sat a letter, its edges creased from being read and reread. Horizon Developments, a slick real estate firm, wanted his land. For a sprawling shopping complex, they called it Progress, offered him a check with more zeros than he'd ever seen. Eli called it theft. This land wasn't just dirt, it was Caleb's memory. It was his legacy. Eli tossed the letter aside and stepped outside, his boots sinking into the soft Virginia soil. For years, he'd supplied fresh produce to nearby military bases. Corn, apples, potatoes, sometimes for free when budgets were tight. It was his way of giving back to the folks who served, the way Caleb had. He'd never asked for thanks, never wanted a pat on the back. But now the world seemed to have forgotten him. The letter gave him 30 days to sell or face a lawsuit. Eli looked out at the wildflower field, the purples and yellows swaying in the early morning breeze, and felt his chest tighten. He could still see Caleb out there, a lanky teenager helping him plant those first seeds, laughing as dirt smudged his face. How do you put a price on that? Back at Arlington, Denny finished his shift and stepped into the guard quarters, his uniform still crisp despite the morning's drizzle. He pulled the silver dollar from his pocket, rolling it between his fingers as he checked his phone. A message from Sarah Thompson caught his eye. He'd met her a few months back at a veterans event where she worked for a nonprofit supporting former soldiers. Her passion reminded him of Michael, fierce, unyielding, always fighting for the underdog. Sarah had invited him to a community event at her father's farm in Virginia. Something about it stuck with him. A farmer who'd spent decades helping the military, now facing the loss of his land to developers. He didn't know why, but he felt a pull to go, like it was more than just a casual invitation. That Saturday, Danny drove his old Ford pickup down a winding road lined with ancient oaks, their branches forming a canopy over the gravel. The Thompson farm came into view, a patchwork of green fields and weathered fences, with a red barn that looked like it had stood through a century of storms. A small crowd had gathered, veterans in ball caps, locals with picnic baskets, kids chasing each other with cups of lemonade. Sarah greeted him with a warm smile, her auburn hair tied back in a loose ponytail. "Danny, you made it. Thanks for coming. This place means everything to my dad. He's been through so much, and now these developers are trying to take it all away." Danny followed her gaze to an older man in faded overalls, stacking ears of corn on a folding table. That had to be Eli. His face was lined with years of sun and sorrow, but his eyes held a quiet strength, like a man who'd seen the worst and kept going. Sarah led Danny over. "Dad, this is Danny Harper. He's a tomb guard at Arlington." Eli's handshake was firm, his voice rough as gravel. "Heard about what you do, son. Takes a special kind of man to stand watch like that." "Takes a special kind of man to keep a place like this going," Danny replied, gesturing to the fields. Eli gave a small nod, like he wasn't used to compliments. They talked for a while, the conversation easy but heavy with unspoken pain. Eli spoke about Caleb, how he loved this land, how he'd planned to take over the farm after his service. "He was 24 when he died," Eli said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Took a bullet to save his squad. Planted those flowers out there for him. Every spring they come back, like he's still here." Danny felt a lump in his throat. He told Eli about Michael, about the camping trip, the silver dollar, the way he carried his brother's memory every day at the tomb. "I know what it's like to hold on to someone through a place," he said. For the first time, Danny felt like someone truly understood the weight he carried. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Danny walked the wildflower fields with Eli. The old man pointed out each type: black-eyed Susans, coneflowers, daisies, his voice softening as he spoke. Planted these with Caleb when he was just a boy. He'd get mad when the rabbits ate the seedlings, but he never gave up. Now, it's all he had left of his boy. Horizon wants to pave it over for some fancy mall, say it's worth millions, but how do you put a price on this? Danny looked out at the field, the colors glowing in the twilight, and thought of the tomb. He saw the same reverence in Eli's eyes that he felt when he stood watch. Some things were worth more than money. Back at Arlington, Danny couldn't shake the image of Eli's field. He'd seen the letter on the kitchen table, the bold red final notice stamped across it like a wound. He knew what it meant to lose something sacred. The tomb was his sanctuary, a place where he honored the fallen, known and unknown. Eli's farm was the same, a living memorial to Caleb, to service, to sacrifice. Danny decided he had to do something. He wasn't just a sentinel, he was a soldier, and soldiers didn't stand by when something was wrong. He reached out to his commanding officer, Major Karen Brooks, a non-nonsense woman with a reputation for getting things done. "Major, there's a farmer in Virginia, Elijah Thompson. His land's been supporting military bases for years. Free produce, community events, you name it. Now developers are trying to take it. It's not right." Major Brooks leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing as Danny explained. She'd grown up in a farming town herself, knew the kind of people who gave without asking for anything in return. "Tell me more about this farm, Harper. If it's been helping our bases, it's worth looking into." Danny laid out everything: Eli's history, Caleb's sacrifice, the wildflower field, the threat from Horizon. Major Brooks nodded slowly. Let me make some calls. If this place is what you say it is, we'll find a way to protect it." Danny left her office with a spark of hope, though he knew the odds were long. The military didn't usually get involved in civilian land disputes. But something about Eli's story felt different. Meanwhile, Eli was losing sleep. Every night he sat on his porch, the creak of his rocking chair the only sound in the stillness. He'd stare at the stars, wondering how it had come to this. He'd given so much: bushels of corn, crates of potatoes, his own son. And now the world wanted to take the last piece of him. Sarah tried to keep his spirits up, bringing him coffee and sitting with him under the night sky. "Dad, we'll fight this. We'll find a way." Eli just shook his head, his voice tired. "Sometimes, Sarah, the world doesn't care about folks like us. It's all